If only I had known what those 4 words would do to me. How they would burn, how they would break me, and how they would awaken the strongest version of myself. When I picked up the phone that evening, the sun was already dipping behind the trees, painting my living room in shades of gold and orange. I had spent the whole day cleaning, baking, preparing like a mother preparing for a celebration she believed she would be a part of. I smiled when I dialed my son Daniel's number. After all, what mother isn't excited to hear about her child's wedding plans? But instead of Daniel's voice, I heard hers. Olivia. Her tone was strangely calm. Too calm. And when she spoke, her words sliced through my heart like an icy blade. Oh, we got married yesterday. We only invited special people. Just like that. No hesitation. No apology. No remorse. Just a smile in her voice, sharp, confident, calculated. I froze. Special people? For 3 years I paid their $500 rent every single month. For 3 years I bought the furniture they sat on, the groceries they ate. For 3 years I was the one they turned to for every emergency, every whim, every convenience. And yet, I was not special enough to be invited to their wedding. The phone felt heavy in my hand. The room suddenly felt colder. And Daniel, my only son, stood quietly behind Olivia, not saying a word, not defending me, not even looking at me. I had bought Olivia's wedding dress. I had saved money for their wedding gift. I had told my sister. I had prepared my home. But none of that mattered. Not to them. In that moment I learned a cruel truth. The people you sacrifice for the most are sometimes the same people who value you the least. Olivia didn't stop there. She leaned her elbow on my sofa, the one I bought for them, and said with the tone of someone bragging, "It was a small ceremony, Marian. Only important people were there. My family, my siblings, people who matter. People who matter. Do you know how it feels to choke on a heartbreak so sudden that it steals the air from your lungs? I felt it. My pink dress, chosen carefully for the wedding, hung uselessly in my closet. The matching shoes sat untouched. Everything I had prepared suddenly turned to dust. But Olivia wasn't done. "Oh, and your son wants you to know he'll call later. He's just busy. Busy. Too busy to tell his mother he got married without her." 7 days later. Exactly 7. My phone rang again. This time, Olivia's voice trembled. Not with confidence. With desperation. "Marian, the rent is due. The landlord says he'll evict us if we don't pay this week. You forgot to transfer the money." Forgot? No, I didn't forget. I remembered everything. Every sacrifice. Every dollar. Every humiliation. I remembered how she smirked while telling me I wasn't special enough. So this time I answered differently. "Olivia," I said slowly, "didn't you say only special people matter? I help special people." The silence that followed. It was delicious. For once she was the one speechless. That night I cried. But not because I was weak. I cried for the years I lost. The years I bent over backwards trying to be needed. Trying to be loved. Trying to matter. I cried because I finally saw the truth. I had been nothing but an ATM with feelings. And for the first time in a long time, something strong, cold, sharp awakened inside me. Not revenge. Not hatred. Just clarity. The kind of clarity that comes after years of letting others walk all over you. The kind that whispers, "Enough." The next morning, with trembling hands, I sat at my kitchen table with a calculator. I needed to know how much of myself, my money, my retirement, my future, I had poured into their lives. Rent, $500 times 36 months equals $18,000. Groceries and supplies, $200 per month times 36 equals $7, 200 gifts and celebrations, $3,000. Olivia's medical emergencies, $800 car loan they never paid back, $2,500 furniture, $1,200. Total, $33,400. $33,400. Money I saved for old age. Money my late husband left for me to live peacefully. Money I gave freely without expectations, because I believed love was priceless. But clearly, I was the only one who thought so. Usually when Daniel called, I would run to the phone like a child desperate for attention. Not anymore. When his name flashed on the screen, I took a deep breath and let it ring. and then ring again. And again. For the first time in my life I chose me. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went for a walk with no purpose. Not to buy groceries for them. Not to pay their rent. Not to run an errand Olivia urgently needed. Just a walk. For me. I passed the park where little Daniel once held my hand and told me I was the best mom in the world. I wonder, when did that little boy grow up into a man who treated me like a burden? When did I start believing I had to buy my son's love? I walked straight into the bank and told Mr. Klein, the manager, I want to cancel every automatic transfer. And I want full protection on all my accounts. He blinked. Are you sure, Mrs. Marion? I have never been more certain. While he typed, my phone buzzed nonstop. Daniel. Olivia. Daniel again. They must have sensed it. The way parasites sense when their host is about to cut them off. I pressed the power button. The phone went black. And for the first time in years, I felt free. But freedom has a price. And mine came in the form of 3 cars parked outside my house when I came home. Daniel's car. Olivia's car. And a third unfamiliar one. My stomach dropped. They had keys. I had given them keys back when I trusted them. Inside, I found a scene straight out of a nightmare. Daniel sat on my sofa, his head in his hands. Olivia paced the room like a cornered animal. And a strange man in a suit, a lawyer, flipped through my personal documents on my dining table. My documents. What is happening here? I demanded. 3 faces turned toward me. Olivia rushed forward. Marion, thank God. We need to talk. This is Mr. Fisher. We're worried about your mental state. Mental state. That was it. They wanted to take control of my finances. Declare me incompetent. Steal everything. My own son. My only child. Standing there trying to strip away my freedom because I stopped paying his bills. That was the moment. The exact second. I stopped being a victim. I looked at Daniel, my little boy, now a grown man, and asked, Are you really doing this to your mother? He didn't answer. Olivia did. Marion, it's for your own good. And then the lawyer stepped forward with a stack of papers. Papers that would take away every right I had. Papers they wanted me to sign. Right there. Right then. In my own house. I picked up those papers. Looked at all 3 of them. And what I said next changed everything. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she finally stops begging to be respected and starts demanding it. Daniel, Olivia, and a lawyer had broken into Marion's house, searching her personal documents and preparing papers to take control of her life. Now the real battle begins. The moment I held those papers in my hands, the room felt colder, heavier, dangerous. Everything was quiet except for the sound of Olivia clicking her nails nervously against my dining table. My table. Daniel kept staring at the floor. He couldn't even look at me. And that hurt more than I expected. Mr. Fisher, the lawyer in the gray suit, cleared his throat as if he were announcing a funeral. Mrs. Marion, these documents will allow your son and daughter-in-law to manage your finances and important decisions. It's temporary. Until you're feeling better. Feeling better? I hadn't felt this clear in years. But Olivia leaned forward, her voice soaked in fake sweetness. You've been confused lately. Forgetting things, acting strange. We just want to help. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Never did. This wasn't concern. This was strategy. They were trying to trap me. I looked at the papers again. Power of attorney. Sign here. Sign there. Give away everything. All neatly typed. All prepared without me. All assuming I would obey. I lifted the papers, walked to the trash can, and dropped them in. Silence. Heavy. Sharp. Electric. Olivia gasped. Daniel shot up from the sofa. Mr. Fisher blinked like he couldn't believe what he had just seen. Finally I said, The only thing I'm signing today is your eviction from my home. My son, my own son, finally found his voice. Mom, are you insane? We're your family. You can't just cut us off. Family? I asked quietly. Is family the people who leave you out of their wedding? Who treat you like a stranger? Who call only when they need money? That hit him. He clenched his jaw, trying to hide the guilt I wish he felt more often. Then it happened. The mask slipped. Everything you have will come to us anyway, she shouted. We're just making it easier for everyone. Easier. For them. I stared at her, finally seeing her clearly. Not as my daughter-in-law, not as Daniel's wife, but as a woman who had planned this for a very, very long time. Mr. Fisher adjusted his tie and tried to regain control. Mrs. Marion. Refusing help is a sign of mental decline. If you won't cooperate, we will pursue legal guardianship. The court can decide you are unfit. Unfit. Unfit to handle my own life. Unfit to manage my own money. Unfit to make my own decisions. Unfit to be free. The threat hung in the air like poison. I took a step closer, my voice firm. Get out of my house. Olivia opened her mouth to argue again, but I cut her off. I said out. For the first time in years. They listened. All three of them walked toward the door, their faces red with anger and embarrassment. But before he stepped outside, Daniel turned around and delivered a blow meant to shatter me. You're going to regret this. One day you'll be old and helpless. And you'll have no one. I swallowed the words like acid, but I didn't break. Not this time. Instead I said, I'm already alone, Daniel. The difference is now it's by choice. The door slammed. The house shook. My hands trembled. But then something incredible happened. For the first time in my life, I felt peace. Not the peace that comes from quiet, but the peace that comes from reclaiming your power. The next morning I called attorney Mr. Hartman, the same man who handled my late husband's will. When I told him everything, he didn't seem surprised. Marion, he said, this is elder financial abuse, and we're going to shut it down. His confidence felt like armor. He outlined the plan. Heavy checkmark document every transfer, every expense. Heavy checkmark freeze all unnecessary accounts. Heavy checkmark change the locks. Heavy checkmark install cameras. Heavy checkmark block all contact. Heavy checkmark prepare for retaliation. Because people like Daniel and Olivia don't go down without a fight. And they weren't done. Not by a long shot. By noon a locksmith arrived. By 3 p.m., cameras were being installed. By evening I had new keys. New locks. New rules. A new life. While they worked, I felt my phone buzzing again and again. Unknown numbers, desperate attempts, back-to-back calls. I ignored every single one. They chose their battle. Now I was choosing mine. At 5 p.m. the phone rang again. Not Daniel. Not Olivia. A different number. I hesitated, then answered. Immediately I heard her. Marion, please don't hang up. Her voice was shaky, desperate. Fake. She was playing a role again. What do you want, Olivia? We want to make it up to you. Dinner at your place. Like old times. Old times? The times where I cooked, cleaned, paid, and gave. And they took, demanded, drained, and disappeared? I almost laughed. Olivia, I asked, how much rent do you owe? Silence. A long, guilty silence. Then, 2 months. Thank you, I said, for finally telling the truth. And I hung up. That night, while testing the new cameras, I saw something chilling. A car slowly driving past my house. Daniel's car. Then Olivia's. Then back again. 3 times. Watching. Planning. Waiting. The battle hadn't ended. It had only just begun. As I stood at my window, lights off, watching their car creep past like a predator circling prey, I realized something terrifying. They weren't giving up. They were preparing for their next move. And it was going to be bigger. Some battles you never imagine fighting. Until the enemy is someone you once cradled in your arms. Let's continue. The air in my house still felt heavy. After I had thrown Daniel, Olivia, and their lawyer out in episode 2, a silence settled in my living room, the kind of silence that doesn't calm you but warns you. You know when the storm is gone, but the air still crackles with electricity? That's exactly how it felt. I sat on my sofa, the same sofa Daniel and Olivia had lounged on so casually, and breathed deeply. My hands trembled not from fear, but from realizing I had done something irreversible. For years I was the one who begged for love, for attention, for validation. But today I had done the unthinkable. I had defended myself against my own son, and even though I didn't regret it, the pain was real. Because no matter how cruel your children become, some part of your heart still remembers the child they once were. By late evening my phone buzzed non-stop. Unknown numbers. Blocked numbers. Numbers I recognized. Daniel. Olivia. Daniel again. Each time it rang, I stared at the screen. Not with guilt. With clarity. I knew exactly what they wanted. Not reconciliation. Not understanding. Not love. They wanted access. My money. My accounts. My future. When the 12th call came in, I pressed silence without hesitation. Not today. Not anymore. Sleep didn't come easily. I tossed and turned, replaying the scene from earlier. Daniel's blank expression. Olivia's crocodile tears. The lawyer's smile. Confident, rehearsed, predatory. For a moment, doubt whispered, "Marian, what if you're overreacting?" But then, my mind showed me the image of Olivia saying, "We only invited special people." And suddenly the fog cleared. No, I wasn't imagining anything. They had used me. And when I stopped being useful, I became a problem. The next morning, I woke up with a decision. I would never again let anyone, family or not, treat me like a foolish, desperate, aging woman waiting to be manipulated. I brewed my coffee, sat at the table, and pulled out a notebook. On the first page I wrote, "My life starting today." Below it I made 3 lists. 1. What I will no longer tolerate. Being used. Being manipulated. Being pressured financially. Being threatened emotionally. Being disrespected in my own home. 2. What I will reclaim. My money. My peace. My independence. My dignity. My future. 3. Who I will protect myself from. Daniel. Olivia. Anyone who joins their plans. I stared at that list for a long time. It wasn't a list of enemies. It was a list of boundaries. And for the first time in years, I felt strong. At 9:15 a.m. I heard a knock. A loud one. Not the gentle knock of a friend. Not the polite knock of a neighbor. This was a demand. I checked the new security camera feed on my phone. My heart skipped. Daniel and Olivia. Again. And this time, Daniel wasn't alone. 2 other people stood behind him. One woman holding a clipboard. A man in a stiff suit. A small army. I didn't open the door. Instead, I pressed the microphone button on the camera. "What do you want?" Daniel looked straight at the camera. "Mom, open the door." "No," I replied calmly. "Mom," he insisted louder this time. "This is serious. These are professionals. You need help." I almost laughed. Help? From the same people who tried to force a legal document into my hand last night? Olivia stepped forward, putting on her sweetest voice. "Marian, we just want to talk. We're worried about you." "Worried," I repeated. "Before or after you broke into my house?" Olivia flinched but quickly recovered. "Marian, please," she said. "You're not thinking clearly." I smiled. "Actually, for the first time in years I am." Daniel moved aside and introduced them. "This is Ms. Howard from Adult Protective Services. And this is Mr. Grant, a specialist in senior financial planning." The woman lifted her chin. "Ma'am, we received concerns about your mental state and decision-making. We're here to evaluate." I felt rage rise. They didn't stop. They didn't compromise. They escalated. They brought the government to my doorstep. I spoke into the camera. "You will not enter my home." The APS worker frowned. "Ma'am, refusing help is also a sign." I cut her off. "And lying about someone's mental health is a crime." The man in the suit stepped forward. "Mrs. Marian, if you simply open the door, we can resolve this peacefully." I inhaled slowly. "Come back with a court order. Until then, step off my porch." As soon as they left, reluctantly, angrily, I grabbed my phone and called the only person who knew the truth. Mrs. Collins, my neighbor. She arrived within 10 minutes, holding a bag of muffins and worry in her eyes. "Marian, I saw them." "For of them? What on earth were they trying to do now?" I explained everything, every chilling detail. She put her hand over mine. "They're not going to stop. People like that. Once they taste control, they don't give it up." I nodded. "I know. Do you have a lawyer?" she asked. "I do," I said. "Mr. Hartman." Mrs. Collins leaned forward. "Call him. Tell him everything." I dialed immediately. When Mr. Hartman answered, he didn't sound surprised. Marian, I suspected they might escalate, he said. What do I do now? I asked. For now? Don't let anyone in. Document everything. And prepare yourself. For what? I whispered. He paused, a heavy, ominous pause. For war. I swallowed. War. Yes, he continued. A financial guardianship petition. They're going to try to legally take control of your money, your house, your decisions. I felt my hands shake, not from fear but from fury. My own son, I said. I know, Mr. Hartman replied gently. But remember, you're not alone. And you're not powerless. I spent that night writing in my journal, not about pain, not about fear, but about truth. How I had been used, how I had been manipulated, how I had been treated as a tool instead of a mother, and how all of it ended now. As I finished writing, my phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. This isn't over, Marian. You're making a mistake. No name, no signature, but I knew exactly who sent it. And instead of fear, I smiled. A real smile. Because this time, I would fight. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee, I heard a sound outside. Paper sliding under my door. I walked over, picked it up, and my breath caught. It was a court summons. Daniel and Olivia had officially filed a petition. Request for legal guardianship over Marian A. Cole. They were taking me to court. They were trying to declare me mentally unfit. They were trying to own my life. Sometimes the people you raised are the same people who look at you as a stepping stone. And sometimes they forget that stones can turn into mountains. After throwing Daniel, Olivia, and their lawyer out of my house, the silence that followed was both healing and terrifying. Healing because for the first time in years the air in my home felt mine again. Terrifying because I knew they wouldn't stop. People driven by entitlement rarely do. I spent that night sitting by the window watching the street. I knew they would return. People like Olivia don't accept no easily. And Daniel, he had learned to lean on her manipulation like a crutch. But as I sat there, another emotion grew inside me. Strength. Not loud, not dramatic, but heavy, solid, and long overdue. The next morning at exactly 8 a.m., a familiar van pulled into my driveway. Mr. Summer and his son Ethan stepped out, carrying new locks and high-security equipment. Ready for a fresh start, Mrs. Marian? Ethan asked kindly. I nodded. For years, I had opened my home to people who drained me. Now I was finally learning to close doors. As they worked, I had a strange thought. If a mother must change her locks to protect herself from her own child, something is deeply wrong. I watched the old locks fall to the ground. They weren't metal. They were memories. The kind that hurt you when you hold them too long. While the locks clicked into place, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Then another. And another. I knew the pattern. It smelled of panic. When a money supply ends, desperation begins. I let every call ring unanswered. I didn't owe anyone an explanation anymore. One message came through before I blocked the number. Mom, it's Daniel. We need to talk. Please. Please. It was a word I hardly ever heard from him. Not genuinely anyway. I deleted the message. For the first time in years, that word didn't control me. Around noon, my neighbor Mrs. Collins came over with a warm drink in her hands. She knocked softly. Marian, dear. I just wanted to see how you're holding up. Yesterday sounded intense. I invited her in. We sat at my kitchen table, and for the first time I let myself unravel. I told her everything. Every detail. Every wound. Every betrayal. She listened quietly, without interrupting, without judging. When I finished, she placed her hand gently over mine. Marian, you're doing the right thing. People like your son and daughter-in-law, they don't stop until you stop them. Her eyes held the wisdom of battles she had fought herself. You're not alone, she added softly. For the first time in a long time, I believed it. After the security cameras were installed, something strange started happening. Every morning and evening, a car would slow roll past my house. Sometimes it was Daniel. Sometimes Olivia. Sometimes both. They never got out. Never knocked. Just watched. Like vultures circling a prey they couldn't reach. Mr. Hartman had told me to keep a record, so I wrote down dates, times, license plates. Felt absurd. Felt heartbreaking. And yet I did it. 'Cause this time, I had to protect myself from the people I once lived for. One evening after another slow drive-by, I checked my mailbox. Inside was an envelope. No return address. But I didn't need one. I knew their handwriting. The letter was short, cold, written with an arrogance only entitlement could produce. Mom, we need access to your accounts to help you. We know you're confused and making harmful decisions. Please cooperate or we'll be forced to take legal measures. Love, Daniel. Love? If this was love, I wondered what cruelty looked like. I tore the letter in half. Then in half again. Then again. Some things deserve to be destroyed. 2 days later, I received a call from Mr. Hartman. His voice was firm. Marian, I need you to come to my office. Something in his tone told me it wasn't good news. When I arrived, he placed a thick stack of papers in front of me. The lawsuit has been filed, he said quietly. My heart stopped. A lawsuit? He nodded. Daniel and Olivia have officially requested the court to declare you mentally incompetent. They're asking for guardianship. Guardianship. The word tasted like poison. It meant losing control. Losing freedom. Losing myself. Marian, he continued. They are claiming you are paranoid, confused, emotionally unstable, and financially irresponsible. I let out a bitter laugh. Paranoid? They broke into my house. They went through my papers. They tried to control my accounts. Mr. Hartman nodded. I know, but they're twisting everything. They always twisted everything. That was the danger of manipulative people. Their lies weren't wild fantasies. They were believable distortions. And now they were using the same weapon. Against me. To fight this, Mr. Hartman said, we need something stronger than their lies. We need a professional mental capacity evaluation. A psychiatric test. At 71. Not because I needed it, but because my own child wanted to paint me as unstable. I closed my eyes for a moment. If motherhood had taught me anything, it was this. You will do anything to protect your child. But sometimes, you must do even more to protect yourself from them. I'll take the test, I said finally. And with that, the battle officially began. That night I stood in front of the mirror. Not as a mother. Not as a victim. But as a woman who realized the world she built was now trying to bury her under its ruins. I looked at my reflection and whispered to myself, they want a war? They have no idea who they're fighting. Because after a lifetime of giving, I was finally learning how to take my life back. They wanted to prove I was crazy. But they forgot one thing. A mother who wakes up becomes unstoppable. Let's continue. By the time episode 5 begins, everything was already falling apart around me. Daniel and Olivia had filed the incompetency case. Their lawyer was preparing statements. Rumors had begun spreading in the neighborhood, not because of me but because of them. And I was preparing for the biggest fight of my life. But let me tell you something. When your own child comes for your freedom, you don't feel fear. You feel a fire that burns through your bones. I sat in my living room with the detailed evaluation from Dr. Moore, the psychiatrist who examined me professionally. Her report didn't just say I was mentally fine. It said, excellent cognitive health, above average memory, clear financial judgment, no signs of dementia, decline, or instability. I stared at the paper and felt something strange. Pride. Something I hadn't felt in years. I whispered to myself, Marian, you are not weak. You were just lonely. This report would destroy their claims. But I wasn't done. Mrs. Collins, my neighbor, my new friend, came to my house with determination in her eyes. Marian, she said, I heard Olivia talking to someone outside yesterday. I raised an eyebrow. What did she say? She told someone. We just need to make her look unstable for a few weeks. Once we get control of her accounts, everything will be easy. My hands turned cold. My heart turned to stone. That was the evidence I needed. Will you testify? I asked her quietly. She didn't hesitate. For you? Absolutely. Later that day, the pharmacist, Mr. Green, came rushing to my door. He held papers in his shaking hands. Mrs. Marian. I was fooled. Olivia lied about why she needed my signature. I didn't know it was for a lawsuit. His face was red with guilt. I touched his arm gently. You didn't betray me. You were tricked. He swallowed hard. I wrote a corrected statement, the truth. It explains everything. I looked at the document. It said, Marion has no irregular medication habits. She is perfectly stable. Olivia misrepresented her intentions. Mr. Green withdraws his previous statement. This was devastating for them. They were running out of lies. That night my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A message. From Daniel. He thought I had blocked him, but he used a friend's phone. It said, Mom, if you don't cooperate, we'll tell the court you're being manipulated by neighbors and outsiders. We can win this the hard way or the easy way. Threatening his own mother. I stared at the message not with sadness, but with clarity. I forwarded the message straight to Mr. Hartman, my lawyer. His response was immediate. Marion, this message alone can turn the entire case in your favor. He exposed their motive, financial control. This is perfect. For once, Daniel had done something useful. Over the next 2 days, Mr. Hartman and I built something powerful. A folder of evidence so heavy it could crush their entire case. Inside it, heavy checkmark, Dr. Moore's psychiatric report. Heavy checkmark, corrected statement from the pharmacist. Heavy checkmark, testimony from Mrs. Collins. Heavy checkmark, documentation of the $33,400 I spent. Heavy checkmark, proof of forced entry into my home. Heavy checkmark, pictures of them going through my documents. Heavy checkmark, screenshots of Daniel's threatening message. Heavy checkmark, notes from neighbors who witnessed their yelling. Heavy checkmark, bank statements proving I was in full control of my finances. When we were done, Mr. Hartman said, Marion, most elderly abuse victims never get this much evidence. You didn't just defend yourself. You built a fortress. I almost laughed. Me, the woman they thought was weak, was about to defeat them with their own greed. That night, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I prayed. Not for them. Not for forgiveness. But for strength. To face my son in court. To hear him lie. To feel him choose money over blood. But I reminded myself, I am not fighting my son. I am fighting the man greed turned him into. I stood in front of the mirror. The woman staring back at me didn't look scared. She looked ready. Ready for war. The next morning, dressed in my black suit, evidence folder in hand, I walked toward the courthouse. Daniel stood outside with Olivia, whispering to their lawyer. The moment Daniel saw me, his face changed. He expected a confused old woman, but he saw something else. A calm, a strength, a fire he hadn't seen before. I walked past him without a word, and as I placed my hand on the courtroom door, I whispered to myself, this ends today. Let me take a deep breath before I continue, because episode 6 is where things stop being just family drama and turned into something bigger, darker, and far more dangerous. I never imagined my own son would go this far, but he did. And this was the day I realized, when greedy children want control, nothing is off limits. Not even the government. Let me tell you what happened next. It was a quiet morning. The kind of morning where sunlight falls gently through the curtains, and the house feels safe, peaceful. I was finally enjoying my coffee, something I hadn't been able to do for weeks. Then the doorbell rang. Ding dong. Not aggressive. Not angry. Just official. I checked my security camera, expecting maybe a delivery or Mrs. Collins. But no. Standing at my door was a young woman in a crisp blazer, holding a clipboard, with the unmistakable badge of a government social investigator. My stomach dropped. Good morning, Mrs. Marion, she said with a professional smile. I'm here from Senior Services. We received a report that you may be at risk. At risk? I felt my hands go cold. I didn't need anyone to tell me who filed that report. Daniel. Olivia. My own blood. May I come in? She asked politely. Of course. If I refused, it would only look worse. Inside, she walked slowly through my living room, taking notes like she was examining a crime scene. Then she sat down. The questions began. Mrs. Marion, we were told you are displaying signs of mental confusion. Who told you that? I asked. I'm not allowed to disclose that. But I already knew. She continued flipping papers. We have statements saying you've cut off contact with your family. refused medical help, and installed unnecessary security systems out of paranoia. Paranoia. The word made my jaw clench. Those cameras weren't paranoia. They were protection from my own son. And it's also reported, she added hesitantly, that you may be easily manipulated by people around you. Manipulated? I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or both. But I stayed calm. Miss, I said softly, I would like my lawyer present before answering anything. She tried to object. But I didn't budge. So we waited. 20 minutes later. My lawyer, Mr. Hartman, stepped inside like a storm rolling in. Please show me your authorization, he demanded in his deep, calm voice. She did. He skimmed it once, then twice, then closed the folder and placed it neatly on the table. Miss, he said firmly, my client is being targeted by her own son and daughter-in-law for financial control. We have documentation of everything, every payment, every manipulation, every attempt at forced guardianship. Her eyebrows shot up. I watched the shift happen, the slow realization, the pieces falling into place. This investigator, she wasn't evil. She was just misinformed. Mr. Hartman placed a thick packet of evidence in front of her. Bank statements, notes, timelines, photos, even recordings from the day Daniel and Olivia broke into my home. Her eyes widened. This, she whispered. This is very serious. Yes, my lawyer said. The abuse is serious. But my client is perfectly mentally capable. The investigator turned to me. Mrs. Marion, is it true you manage all your finances yourself? Yes. Do you live independently? Yes. Do you take any medication? Only vitamins. And do you feel safe? I looked her straight in the eyes. I feel unsafe from the people who reported me. She nodded slowly, understanding everything. After nearly an hour of reviewing evidence and asking measured questions, she stood up, closed her folder, and said, Mrs. Marion, I see no sign of mental decline. No sign of risk. This case will be closed immediately. I almost felt my knees give out. Relief melted through me. I wasn't just fighting back anymore. I was winning. But victories come with warnings. As she left, the investigator looked back at me and said quietly, Ma'am, whoever reported you did it with deliberate malice. Please be careful. Careful. I've been careful my whole life. This time I needed to be prepared. Because Daniel and Olivia had officially escalated the fight. And I knew deep down, they weren't done yet. Not even close. That evening, as the sun set and my home finally felt peaceful again, my lawyer turned to me and said, Marion, brace yourself. Your son is about to take the next step. And it will be the worst one yet. I stared at him terrified. What step? I whispered. He took a slow breath. They're preparing a lawsuit. To have you declared mentally incompetent. My heart stopped. My own child. My blood. My son. Trying to legally steal my freedom. Everything I had feared was now a reality. And this is where episode 6 ends. Because what came next was the fight of my life. If there was ever a day I felt the weight of my entire life on my shoulders, it was the day I walked into that courtroom. The morning of the hearing arrived like a storm I could feel in my bones. I woke up before sunrise. My hands shook slightly as I buttoned my black suit, the same suit I wore at my husband Robert's funeral. I never thought I'd wear it again for something this painful. But grief has many shapes. Losing a son while he's still alive, that might be the cruelest form. As I stood in front of the mirror, I whispered to myself, Marion, today you fight for your mind, your freedom, and your dignity. Mr. Hartman arrived at 7 a.m. to pick me up. Are you ready? He asked gently. No, I said honestly. But I'm going anyway. He nodded. That's enough. During the drive, I stared out the window watching the city rush by. People walking, children going to school, strangers laughing at bus stops. And I wondered how many of them had faced what I was facing. How many mothers had been dragged into court by the very children they raised. When the courthouse doors opened, cold air hit my face. Inside, I saw them immediately. Daniel, my son, in a brand new suit he probably couldn't afford. And Olivia, standing beside him like a widow at a funeral, dressed all in black, eyes glossy with fake sorrow. But they were not there to mourn me. They were there to bury me alive under false accusations. When Daniel saw me, he looked away. Olivia didn't. She stared right into my eyes with that same cold confidence she had the day she told me only special people were invited. But today, I felt nothing for her. Not anger. Not fear. Just clarity. The moment the hearing started, their lawyer, an elegant man with too much confidence, stood up and delivered a performance worthy of a movie. Your Honor, he began, our goal today is simple. We want to protect Mrs. Marion from herself. Protect me. From myself. I almost laughed. He continued. She has shown signs of declining mental capacity. She installed unnecessary security systems, isolated herself, refused medical help, cut off her family. Cut off her family? I cut off parasites. Not family. But I stayed silent. Because silence can be powerful. Then came the part that broke me. Her son Daniel loves her deeply and only wants what's best for her. I watched my son, my only child, nod in agreement. He looked sincere. He looked heartbroken. But I knew better. He was acting. Acting for money. Then Olivia took the stand. She cried on command. Perfect tears. Perfect timing. Marion has always been like a second mother to me, she said in a trembling voice. But lately she's changed. She's confused. She's paranoid. She attacked us emotionally. We're just trying to help her. Help me? By forcing me into legal guardianship? By taking my money? By insulting me? Her tears fell, but her eyes stayed cold. I looked at her and thought, if manipulation were an art, she'd be a world-class painter. When Daniel walked up to testify, my heart almost cracked open. He placed his hand on the Bible. My son. My baby boy. And then he lied. Lie after lie. Twisting reality into something unrecognizable. Mom has been acting strangely. She doesn't make rational decisions. She pushes us away. We're scared for her. We just want her safe. Safe. If safety meant losing control of my money, my home, my independence, then their version of safety was a prison. As he spoke, I looked at him, really looked, and asked myself, where did I go wrong? But the truth was simpler. I hadn't failed as a mother. He had failed as a son. Then it was our turn. Mr. Hartman stood up calmly. Your Honor, may I begin? He pulled out one stack after another. Bank statements, receipts, screenshots, messages, transfer records. $33,400. The courtroom gasped softly. Your Honor, he said, this is not a case of a declining mother. This is a case of grown adults losing access to their personal bank machine. He paused. And the moment that machine stopped dispensing money, suddenly she was mentally unstable. The judge's expression shifted. For the first time, the truth began to shine through. Then Dr. Moore, the psychiatrist who evaluated me, entered the courtroom. Calm, professional, eyes full of certainty. She handed the judge my mental evaluation. Your Honor, Mrs. Marion is not only mentally stable, she scored above average for her age in every cognitive test. Memory, logic, reasoning, financial judgment, all excellent. Another shift in the room. Daniel's jaw tightened. Olivia looked like her soul left her body. Their lawyer swallowed hard. When Mr. Hartman called my name, I stood slowly, walked to the witness stand, and placed my hand on the Bible. For a moment the room disappeared. It was just me. And the truth. Mrs. Marion, Mr. Hartman said, why did you stop financially supporting Daniel and Olivia? I took a deep breath. Because I finally realized, I said loudly, that what I was giving wasn't love, it was funding. The courtroom murmured. They didn't call to ask how I was. They called when the rent was due. They didn't visit on holidays. They visited when they needed groceries. I wasn't a mother to them. I was money. Olivia's face flushed red. And when I stopped paying, I continued, they tried to take my freedom, using the excuse of mental health. I looked at Daniel, my voice breaking. You didn't lose your mother, Daniel. You lost your bank account. He dropped his gaze. Not one word came out of his mouth. 2 painful hours passed. Then the judge returned. Everyone stood. I held my breath. After reviewing the medical evaluations, testimonies, and financial evidence, the judge began. It is clear that Mrs. Marion is mentally competent. My knees almost gave out. The request for guardianship is denied. 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 Like a hammer smashing the chains they tried to put around my life. And furthermore, the judge added, the court finds that the plaintiffs may be motivated by financial interest rather than concern for Mrs. Marion's well-being. Olivia gasped. Daniel swallowed hard. The judge stood. This case is closed. As we walked out of the courtroom, Olivia shot me a look of pure hatred. Daniel didn't look at me at all. But as I stepped into the sunlight, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Pure burning freedom. But little did I know, this battle wasn't over. Because when desperate people lose their last source of money, they become dangerous. People think the courtroom is where battles are won. But the truth is, the real war happens before you ever step inside. The days before the trial felt nothing like peace. If anything, they felt like standing on railroad tracks hearing a train approaching, but not knowing from which direction. Every night before the hearing I barely slept. I would lie awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling thinking, what if they win? What if they take my money? What if a judge actually believes I'm incompetent? Do you know the kind of fear that crawls into your chest and refuses to leave? That was my companion. But every morning I forced myself up. I made myself coffee. I breathed. I reminded myself, if I don't fight back, they win. Mr. Hartman visited my home almost every day. My dining table transformed into a war room. Stacks of documents, financial statements, printouts of messages, witness statements, timeline charts, photos. Every piece of paper was a weapon. Every detail mattered. Mr. Hartman pushed me hard. He wasn't cruel. He was preparing me for survival. Marion, they will try to confuse you. Marion, they will exaggerate your reactions. Marion, they will twist your silence. Marion, do not let them guilt you. He made me rehearse answers. He made me practice explaining my finances. He made sure I could summarize everything clearly. I felt like a student taking the final exam of her life. But this exam had no retake. One night, 3 days before the trial, I broke. Completely. I sat on the floor of my bedroom and cried until my throat burned. Not because I was weak, but because I felt so terribly. My son wanted to put me in legal chains. I whispered into the empty air, Daniel, why? And the silence answered back. At 9 p.m. there was a soft knock on my door. It was Mrs. Collins, the neighbor who had become the older sister I never knew I needed. She took one look at my face, and without saying a word stepped inside and hugged me. Marion, she whispered, you're stronger than you think. You didn't raise Daniel to be this way, life shaped him. But now life is shaping you too. And it's shaping you into someone who finally loves herself. No sermon. Just understanding. And sometimes that's all a broken heart needs. The next morning, something unbelievable happened. My phone rang. Unknown number. Normally I ignored these. But that morning, something told me to answer. A man's voice spoke nervously. Mrs. Marion? My name is, well, it doesn't matter. I just wanted you to know. Daniel and Olivia hired me last week. They wanted me to testify that you were mentally unstable. I froze. He continued. I refused. And I quit. But I thought you should know. They're not trying to protect you. They're trying to win. And he hung up. He didn't want involvement. He didn't want trouble. But he gave me exactly what I needed. The truth. The pure Mr. Hartman arrived with a stack of papers. He looked furious. Marion, you need to see this. He handed me a printed statement. A document supposedly written by a medical professional diagnosing me with early cognitive decline. Except, the signature wasn't real. The dates didn't match. The letterhead was a badly edited template off the internet. They forged a medical condition. My own son forged a document to declare me mentally unfit. In that moment I didn't feel anger. I felt something far colder. Clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't love. This was greed, pure and simple. That evening my little army, Mrs. Collins, Cynthia from the salon, Maria, Alfreda, everyone from the garden group came over. My house buzzed with voices, support, comfort, strength. They brought food to warm blankets, a presence I didn't know I needed. Maria placed her hand on mine. Marion, listen to me. You are not fighting alone. You have a circle now. A sisterhood. We're walking into this courtroom with you. even if only in the audience. One by one they promised, "We'll testify. We'll speak the truth. We will not let them paint you as crazy." For the first time, I felt protected. The night before the trial, Mr. Hartman came one last time. He sat across from me, took a slow breath and said, "Marian, they are desperate. Desperate people fight dirty." I nodded. "They will lie. So will their lawyer. They will use every trick they can. They will try to poke emotional wounds." I nodded again. "But you, Marian, you will win." I looked up. "Why are you so sure?" And he answered, "Because everything you've done, every decision you've made, every dollar you've spent, has proof. Truth is your shield. Competence is your sword. And their greed will destroy their own case." That night was long. Very long. I stood by my window looking out at the quiet street thinking about my late husband, the home we built, the child we raised, the mistakes I made, the mother I was, the woman I am now. And I whispered into the night, "Tomorrow, I fight back. Not as a victim. Not as a frightened old woman. But as Marian, a woman who gave too much for too long, and finally decided to give to herself." The last thing I remember from that night is standing in front of the mirror. I didn't see fear. I didn't see weakness. I didn't even see sadness. I saw a fire I thought I had lost years ago. And with a steady voice, I told my reflection, "Let them come." Because the next morning, I would walk into that courtroom with my head held high, and the battle for my freedom would begin. This is the part of the story where most people expect a happy reunion. But life is not a movie. And sometimes walking away is the real victory. The day the judge dismissed the guardianship case, I walked out of the courtroom feeling lighter than air. It was the first time in years my shoulders didn't feel burdened with guilt, responsibility, and fear. I had won. Not just legally. I had reclaimed myself. Daniel and Olivia left the courthouse in silence. Olivia's hatred burned in her eyes. Daniel's face carried something different. A mix of anger and perhaps shame. But it didn't matter anymore. For the first time, their emotions were not my responsibility. That night, I sat alone in my living room. The same living room they had once invaded. The same sofa they sat on as they tried to declare me mentally incompetent. I looked around and realized, this house held too many memories. Too many shadows. Too many battles. It was time for a new beginning. I didn't sell my house out of fear. I sold it out of freedom. 3 months later, I had settled into a beautiful apartment near the city center. For the first time in decades, I felt young again. I bought fresh curtains, painted the walls a warm color, filled the rooms with plants. It wasn't a house built for a family. It was a home built for me. My mornings became sacred. Coffee, sunlight through the balcony, and no phone buzzing with emergencies. No rent reminders. No guilt traps. No manipulation. Just me and peace. I traveled. Paris, Vienna. Places I had postponed for years, telling myself, maybe one day when I'm done helping Daniel. But one day never comes until you choose it. I saw sunrise from a boat in Venice. I painted landscapes along the Seine. I ate pastries in small street cafes with strangers who felt more like family than the people I sacrificed everything for. And with every step in a new city, I whispered to myself, Marian, you're finally living. People think losing a child's love is the deepest wound a parent can feel. But sometimes, you haven't lost the love. You've finally seen that it was never there. That realization hurts. But it also heals. I stopped asking, why didn't he love me? And started asking, why didn't I love myself enough to walk away sooner? And that question changed everything. Mrs. Collins and the Garden Club group became my circle. We laughed, cooked together, shared memories, and discussed life like old friends who had known each other forever. One night, over tea, Mrs. Collins said, Marian, sometimes God removes people from your life because they were using the love you gave them. Her words settled deep in my heart. Maybe I didn't lose a son. Maybe I lost a person who pretended to be one. I donated half of my savings to organizations that protect elderly victims of financial abuse. Women like me, mothers like me, people who were robbed of dignity in the name of family. My pain found meaning. My story became a shield for others. You may wonder, did Daniel ever apologize? No. Not once. I heard from others that he and Olivia downsized their apartment, struggled with bills, and for the first time in years had to live without my money. Maybe that's what they needed. Not punishment. Reality. Some lessons only life can teach. Not a mother. And now when I sit on my balcony at night looking at the stars, I feel something I didn't feel for a long time. Pride. Not in Daniel. Not in Olivia. Not in the court's decision. But in myself. For walking away. For choosing courage over guilt. For choosing peace over fear. For choosing my own life after giving so much of it to others. I am Marion. I am 72. And I finally learned, freedom is not a gift others give you. It's the moment you decide you deserve better.